This is Bar Fleischman here at the Tikkun Elevator Kollel again, and I have been informed that, I'm not a Hollywood producer, so I screw up the video is a lot more complicated to do. So there's lighting issues and there's also sound issues. So reading from the book, this is really important, a great book, The Ultimate Connection with God, Second 7-Step Guide to Jewish Spirituality, written by Rabbi Mimran, with whom I learned several years. And he taught me some of these techniques, which, could always use a lot more help. So I'm reading this now to try to get back into it and see it some more. So this particular piece is the second introduction. He calls this the second introduction. It says the B'nai Nevi'im, the school of the prophets. Now we're going to get the idea of what's going on in Jewish meditation. What is it all about? Let me bring this down a little bit closer, and I'll just have to move it around. Try to keep it in picture. It says the commandment of Devekus B'Hashem, bonding to the Creator, enables an individual to develop the proper spiritual skills and practices in order to have a direct, personal, spiritual encounter and experience with our blessed Creator, he adds. The methods and manners of such spiritual skills have long been an integral part of traditional Torah learning and performing the necessary mitzvos. Throughout the centuries, literally since the days of Moshe Rabbeinu himself, prophecy and later Ruach HaKodesh was a daily spiritual occurrence. Even today, we have those spiritually focused souls who are inspired with a divine impression, enabling them to be in the presence of the divine. An important point should be mentioned that most people are not usually gifted to be in contact with the spiritual world. Like in the olden days, one had the opportunity to attend special schools established exclusively for this purpose, to excel in this domain, since this could not be achieved on one's own merit. So he said these schools of the prophet and the students were called B'nai Nevi'im, the sons of the prophets, since the student is always considered as dear to the teachers as his own children. In other words, one who sought to bond with Hashem and experience the divine presence had to join a school of fellow colleagues who, under the direction of the experienced master prophet, trained the novices in the art of spiritual realities and the methods and techniques used to experience them. This prophetic training program required the beginner prophet to adopt a rigorous set of training rules aimed at reorienting his mind and consciousness to cultivate within him the sensitivity of subtle spiritual realities unseen and unknown by the common person. Trainees were trained in the science of consciousness manipulations. They cultivated an awareness of the subtle nuances of the spiritual forces that underlie physical forms that cause the flow of all things here on earth. In reality, the student prophet had to learn to experience an alternative reality existing side by side with this, our own world. The passageway was not via some external means, but rather through a secret inner passage through the inner recesses of the mind. With a lot of practice and patience, the student would be able to transcend the realm of the inner mind until eventually achieving an experience of the outermost limits that the human consciousness can perceive. At this junction is where the student would have transcended spiritual experience. I think this is a misprint. So he says at this junction, the student would have a tremendous spiritual experience, something like that. With the destruction of the first Holy Temple, many thousands of years ago, the age of prophecy ended. Nevertheless, a lower level of spiritual enlightenment was and is still available. He calls this, and we call this, Ruach HaKodesh. Since the days of the Holy Temple, aspiring students of prophecy have never been dissuaded from the lower forms and levels of accomplishment that the epoch of the exile has brought upon the Jewish people. The prophetic were nevertheless transmitted, I think he means the prophecies, were nevertheless transmitted through the ages until today by a small circle of spiritual seekers. So I guess he meant, I think it's a little misprint. In some places in the book, it needs a little work. Poverty really, or not enough funds, really leads to not necessarily have everything edited the proper way. So let's read this again. The prophetic, maybe the prophetic experience maybe would work here, were nevertheless transmitted through the ages until today by a small small circle of spiritual seekers are still doing this. The method and techniques used to expand human consciousness, enabling it to experience and embrace spiritual reality, have been well preserved in Torah literature. These techniques and their practices are considered vital because only they enable one to fulfill the important biblical commandment of the Vegas, bonding with Hashem. Now I see that all that I hear that Rabbi Mimran is saying in this book so far. We're going to get into a lot more. So this is a different set of thinking. You have to learn it. You have to learn how to think differently. He did teach me about this. He did talk to me about this. But exactly how we apply this, we could use a lot of practice. I could. And over here, we maybe could learn a little bit. The next lesson is going to be a lesson for the prophets, Yechezkel and Eliyahu Hanavi. Thank you very much for listening. This has been Baruch Fleischman. I am at the Tikkun Elevator call-out.